يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. أسأل الله العظيم رب العرش العظيم أن يجعل جمعنا هذا جمعا مرحوما ولا يجعل من بيننا شقيا ولا محروما. لازلنا نواصل. We're still continuing with the signs of the hour. Last week we touched base for 2 halaqas on al-Masih al-Dajjal. Does anybody remember why he's called al-Masih?
Because some scholars say that he's going to wipe the earth, or other scholars say that his eyes wipe.
White. MashaAllah. Somebody's been paying attention. ولماذا سمي الدجال دجال؟ What is دجال؟ من الدجل. It's okay, it's okay.
No, come on.
So I'll tell you, he's a liar. But it's more than just lie. And that ليس كذاب.
Manipulator.
Deceit. Yes. He's a deceiver. Huh? He manipulates. Very well said, inshallah. And we said that Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam will put him out of his misery. When this happens is the time where Yajooj and Majooj will emerge. Gog and Magog. Isa is Jesus, yes. You can always just raise your hand or ask your brothers. So Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam is Jesus. And he is the one who is the only one that is going to kill al-Masih al-Dajjal. When this happens, Isa ibn Maryam will establish peace on earth. However, that peace is very short-lived, as you will see. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will decree that Yajooj and Majooj will emerge. Before we get to Yajooj and Majooj, we have to mention a very important man in history. Do you have a question? Yes, a good guess, yes. Dhul or Dhul Qarnayn. This man was noted in history even by Banu Israel. Even Quraysh, they asked about him. And they asked Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam about him. He said, who is this Dhul Qarnayn? I'm going to explain it, just one second. The ulama, they said he is named Dhul Qarnayn. That's actually not his name. It's his status or his nickname. Okay? And it means 1 or 2 things. It means the one who wore a helmet with 2 horns. Okay? Like you've seen the Vikings, you know, they used to adorn those helmets with the 2 big horns. They were warriors. So Allahu A'lam, he wore a helmet that was like that, with 2 horns, big horns. Or it means the one that ruled over 2 generations. Okay, Qarn fil Arabi, generation. Also, it could mean, Wallahu A'la wa A'lam, the one who controlled or ruled over the 2 sides, from the east to the west. So Allahu A'lam why he's called Dhul Qarnayn. But this man, if you mention Yajooj and Majooj, you have to mention this man. Because he was mentioned in the Quran as the only man who was able, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to put these miserable human beings away temporarily. Who was Dhul Qarnayn? Was he a prophet? Was he a messenger? The rajah is that no, he was not a prophet, nor was he a messenger. We don't have any clear evidence to say that he was a prophet or a messenger. Even Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did not know. And he said, I do not know about this, regarding this aspect. Some of the ulama ذهبوا وقالوا إنه نبي من الأنبياء. But we don't have any clear authentic narration to indicate this. Some even said that he is an angel, a malak. And this is a very far stretched opinion, and it strands from a saying that goes back to Umar radiallahu anhu arda. Again, this is very far. The most closest opinion, the rajah, is that he was a pious king. Malikun Salih. Yes.
This time asking about an English word. What's pious mean?
Pious means very good, obedient, a good worshipper. So, and we know for a fact, Wallahu a'la wa a'lam, from what the ulama gathered, is that his lineage goes back to the Arab, to the Arabs, particularly the Arabs of Yemen. So Dhul Qarnayn, a man with two horns, or ruled over east and west in the entire region, or the man who led or ruled the world through two major generations. He was not a prophet, he was a pious king, and he was from the Arabs. Wallahu a'la wa a'lam. Why did they say that? Because they used to name their kings and their rulers Dhul. Dhul, and then they'll give the laqab. There's another opinion that I should mention, is that they said that he battled with two kings and he cut their horns, because they had horns that they used to adorn, so they called him the two-horned king. There's many different opinions. I looked into this matter very deeply. I'm only giving you what's sort of striking. I have to make this very clear. You will find YouTube videos on Google, wherever, that this man, Dhul Qarnayn, was Alexander the Great. This is absolutely false. If you research who, I shouldn't even mention his name, Sikandar al-Akbar. This man was an alcoholic, a pedophile, a womanizer. He was a degenerate by every sense of the word. A degenerate means someone who is below average intelligence, below average morality.
Are you referring to Alexander?
Alexander the Great, yeah. Alexander. Yeah. He's an alcoholic, a pedophile, a womanizer. He was nothing compared to Dhul Qarnayn. And just so you know, if you look in history, it's cited in history that Alexander, although he ruled the vast regions of the world, one of the greatest conquerors, supposedly, he died of what cause? What caused Alexander the Great to die? He died from alcoholism. He died a pitiful death. So there is opinions circulating. These opinions have no merit, no authenticity. When was Dhul Qarnayn's time, or his era? And this is where it gets really interesting. Some of the ulama, hafidhahumullah wa rahimahumullah, they said that he was after the time of Musa alayhi salam. وَاسْتَدَلُّوا, and they took this evidence from Surah Al-Kahf, is the stories were placed in order. Some of the ulama said no, he was before the time of Musa alayhi salam. The rajah opinion, wallahu a'la wa a'lam, and I go by this opinion, is that he was long before. As you will clearly see why. There's a few notes in history, in his story, that will indicate to us he was way before the time of Musa alayhi salam. يقول جل من قائل في كتابه الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ويسألونك عن ذي القرنين قل سأتلو عليكم منه ذكرا. When Quraysh wanted to test the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they said, you know what, tell us about this guy we keep hearing about. He was so famous in history. Banu Israel knew who he was. He was cited in history. So they're like, who is this guy, Dhul Qarnayn? Tell us something. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam doesn't speak from his opinion. In huwa illa wahyun yuha. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the divine decree from his words, Jalla min qail. He says, when they ask you about Dhul Qarnayn, tell them I will tell you something simple about him. And this is the most authentic narration, this is the most authentic evidence we have, is Kalamullah. And then we have the authentic narrations of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So don't start dwelling here. Maybe what does the Torah say? What does the Injil? What do these guys say? No, we have all the evidence we need and all the facts we need. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He describes this man. And look very clearly, you read this every Jum'ah, but you might have missed a few details. The first thing He says about him, إِنَّا مَكَّنَّا لَهُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Right away you understand something major about this guy. مَكَّنَّا مِنَ التَّمْكِينِ. This individual, Dhul Qarnayn, had a full established power and authority. Tamkeen. No one challenged him. And if anyone dared, he would overcome them by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ سَبَبًا. If I just gave you this one ayah, you would understand who this man was. Yani Mumakkan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala established him, empowered him, gave him all the resources he needed, all the intelligence, all the abilities. And then, He says, and he was guided. كُلِّ شَيْءٍ سَبَبًا. He had a purpose and a reason on this earth. He was guided by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we say this doesn't mean wahi. It's not wahi. Okay? Some of the ulama refer to it as ilham. It's a guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every guidance is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it is not divine decree. فَأَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا. And here we know more about him. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, and he followed the guidance. He lived with a purpose to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What was his purpose? What was his reason? What was this guidance all about? It is to promote the good and to forbid the evil. He used to travel far, to and fro, from east to west, all around the world to establish good. And any wrong, he would put it down. There was no persecution. There was no process. Every single body, every single human being was under his authority by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the ulama, they cited that only two pious men ruled the entire world. The first was Sulaiman alayhi salam. And the second was Dhul Qarnayn. حتى إذا بلغ مغرب الشمس وجدها تغرب في عين حمئة. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us about his story, and it goes and He's describing how he went from the east to the west, and he traveled far and wide, and he reached the furthest point in the west where the sun would set in murky water, and he found the people therein. Those people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded him to promote La ilaha illallah, to promote the good. And if anyone transgressed, he would punish them. He would punish them. Yani this man, he was not playing around. This is the kind of guy we need today. Huh? And from then he guided the people and called them to that which is good. And if they disobeyed, he punished them. There is no playing around here. Then he traveled to the furthest point in the east, and he found a people there that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes. He says these people, they were so primitive. Primitive meaning very simple. They had no way of protecting themselves from the sun. They lived in a region that was open and vast. There wasn't many trees or shade to take reprieve from the sun. This is a direct indication, evidence that we have these people were primitive. They didn't have any buildings. لم يبنوا شيء لم يتقوا من الشمس. They were very primitive. Okay? And some of the ulama, they said that they were cave dwellers. People who hid in caves from the sun, from the heat of the sun. Then he traveled again. And this is where it gets even more interesting. When he traveled towards a region near Azerbaijan. And this region is described by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a mountainous region. Like to the end of the world, this man went everywhere. And in this region, there was a people between two great mountains. Which mountains they are? Allahu a'la wa a'lam. And just so we're clear, it is not in China. a lot of people online, they state the claim, false claim, that what he built was the China Wall. The Great Wall of China? No, it's not what he built. He built something far more superior than that. Because the Great Wall of China is continuously falling apart, and being maintained after all these years. ولكن what Dhul Qarnayn built is still standing strong since that time. When he got to this region, this mountainous region, between these two great mountains, there was a people there. And these people, when they saw him, they knew him. They had heard of him. Word travels fast when you're very powerful and you rule the world, you know what I mean? So, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said that these people had very limited speech and could not understand speech. لا يكادون يفقهون قولا. The wording here is very important. Pay attention. لا يكادون يفقهون قولا. He didn't say لا يفقهون قولا. He didn't say they do not understand speech. He says لا يكادون, meaning their speech understanding is very limited. So they had some understanding. Because it would be a contradiction if they had no understanding, but then they communicated with the Qarnayn. So from these evidences, we have a people that he met in the east and in the west that were primitive. They couldn't hide from the sun. They had no buildings. And then he meets people that had no known language. They didn't understand language. فَيَعني, this is far before the time of Musa alayhi salam. The time of Musa alayhi salam, the Fara'ina, they were building huge monuments. They had scribes and scrolls and languages and different dialects. So this is far beyond the time, before the time of Musa alayhi salam. Allahu a'lam wa a'lam. So when he met these people, they recognized him right away. A savior came to them because they know wherever Dhul Qarnayn goes, he establishes justice. He establishes good and peace. So right away they said to him, they said, Yajooj and Majooj. And this is the first mention we have in Surah Al-Kahf. Yajooj and Majooj mufsiduna fil ard. Yani the first indication, the first description we have of them, they're not tall, they're not handsome, they're not short, they're not rough. Mufsiduna fil ard. They cause ruckus and chaos and destruction on earth. Yani, if I told you somebody, he does a particular thing which is bad, that's one thing. These people have basically summed up all the evil. They destroy earth. They destroy everything on earth. Al-Khadr wal-Yabas, everything. Everything. There's nothing that's left untouched by them that is unharmed. And they said to him, please help us. Because these guys, they're two tribes by the way. Yajooj and Majooj. These guys, they live behind the mountains. And they come out whenever they feel like. And when they come out like hordes. Like hordes, flocks. And they overwhelm the valley. They eat our crops. They eat our livestock. They eat everything. They destroy everything. They rape, they pillage, they burn. They kill, they murder. They even eat human beings. Some of the ulama that they said they're cannibals. They're cannibals. مفسدون في الأرض. So they said, Dhul Qarnayn, please help us create something to prevent them from coming all the time. So this is where it gets interesting. These primitive people, they had no solution. They had no answer for Yajooj and Majooj. And by the way, Yajooj and Majooj are human beings. They are human beings. The ulama, they said that not only are they human beings, but we know their lineage, where they come from. Rajah, the more correct opinion, is that they are from the children of Yafith. You remember when we mentioned in the qissa of Nuh alayhi salam, one of his children that survived was named Yafith, and he is the father of the Turks. When we say Turks, we don't mean the Turkish people today. That region, the genealogy goes back to the Turks. So Yafith is the father of that region, and they are from that region. And they are absolutely human beings. And a lot of the ulama, they said, they're named Yajooj and Majooj. They're named Yajooj and Majooj because they emerge like a rage, like a tsunami. They overwhelm. Yajooj wa Yamoojun. And they're very harsh. There is nothing that can contain them. Nothing that can stop them. Like a tsunami that will destroy everything in its pathway. There's so many in number. And there are only 2 tribes, but there are many, many, many in number. And they even offered Dhul Qarnayn, these people who were masakin, they were being persecuted by Yajooj and Majooj. They even offered Dhul Qarnayn some money, some good, some treasure, just to help them. فَقَالَ مَا مَكِنِّي فِيهِ رَبِّي خَيْرٌ. He says, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided me is far better, and thank you very much. And then he said something amazing. فَأَعِينُونِي بِقُوَّةٍ. Help me with just, give me a hand, meaning. And this is something that we all have to pay attention to. You read Surah Al-Kahf every Friday. We have here a man that ruled the world. مَكَّنَّا لَهُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. A man that was guided by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And here he's asking these primitive people, these simple people who are helpless for help. That is an indication of humbleness. That is a sign that regardless of how high you become, how strong you are, how wealthy you are, we need to coexist. Very important note to take here. Very important. Doesn't matter how powerful, how rich, or how wealthy you are. You always seek the help of others to do good. It is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls towards. Inna yadallahi ma'al jama'ah. The guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with the jama'ah. The help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with the jama'ah. We like to do things on our own. It's not good. If you have good people around you, seek their help. Even if it's just a hand. And it is also a sign of modesty and humbleness. There is a famous story from the Salaf. There was impoverished people, poor neighbors, and they used to always knock at the door and ask the other neighbor who was well off for goods and services. Could you lend us this? Could you help us with this? And that family was very giving, very giving. So they would always give the neighbors. But sometimes the woman from that household, the wealthy household, she would go and ask the other neighbor just for salt. Some little bit of salt. The husband said to his wife, he said, why do you ask them masakin? They always ask us for stuff. They have barely enough to get by. She said, so that way they are comfortable with asking us. Because if we ask of something from them, they're comfortable of asking from us. هذه حكمة. This is a wisdom that many people don't understand. You need to make yourself comfortable with everyone. The faqir, the da'if, everyone. Make yourself comfortable with them. It's very important. And this is what Dhul Qarnayn says. فَأَعِينُونِي بِقُوَّةٍ. Just help me. That's it. All you have to do is just give me a hand. Give me a hand and bi'idhnillah it's done. And then he said to them, أَجْعَلْ بَيْنَكُمْ وَبَيْنَهُمْ الرَّدْمَةِ. They just wanted something small, like something like just to prevent them from always coming out. No, he said, no, just give me a hand and I'll seal them off. And you see, again, if you're asked of something simple, give something more, give something better. This is the sign of a Muslim, al-ihsan. Good is not good enough. I always say this. Good is not good enough. Be the best. If you can be the best, then be the best. فقال أعينوني بقوة أجعل بينكم وبينهم الردمة آتوني زبر الحديد حتى إذا ساوى بين الصدفين. Sadafain is the 2 mountains. And Zubar al-Hadid are sheets of metal. Metal sheets. Again, we have a primitive people, but they're getting into the understanding of how to mold metal. So not only did he seal it, but he layered levels upon levels of metal to the point of the peaks of the mountains. So imagine two mountains, and Yajooj and Majooj are right here, and this is the only way out, through the mountains. He sealed it completely with them inside. Sheets and sheets of metal. And before he molted that metal, قال حتى إذا سوى بين الصدفين قال انفخوا. He said blow, meaning create the heat in order to mold the metal. حتى إذا جعله نارا قال آتوني أفرغ عليه قطرة. And then from that metal, the steel, the galvanized steel, he also mixed with copper. Qitr is copper. So it is a mixture of metals galvanized together. And it is layers upon layers. You ever heard of Damascus steel? One of the most famous steels. Almost indestructible. This is far better than that. Because ajaban. It is amazing how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave this man this guidance to create such a structure to prevent these people from emerging. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He describes how strong it is. And listen carefully. فَمَا اسْطَاعُوا أَن يَظْهَرُوهُ وَمَا اسْتَطَاعُوا لَهُ نَقْبًا. استطاعوا. There's the same meaning but phrased differently. Al-istita'a is what? Al-istita'a is what? ألم تستطع. If I ask you, هل تستطع أن تساعدني? What does that mean? Ability. The qudra. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He described this monument, He said جل في علا وَمَا اسْطَاعُوا أَن يَظْهَرُوهُ. They could not reach the top. It was so high. They couldn't reach it. They can't climb it. وَمَا اسْتَطَاعُوا لَهُ نَقْبًا. And they could not even penetrate it. وَأَضَافَ التَّاء. And the ta here is istata'u, is to show you that it is more difficult to penetrate it. The easier way would have been to overcome it. But because they couldn't overcome it, it would be far more difficult for them to go through it. فَلِذَلِكَ قَالَ اسْطَاعُوا فَمَا اسْطَاعُوا أَنْ يَظْهَرُوهُ وَمَا اسْتَطَاعُوا لَهُ نَقْبًا. These are very simple yet very, very deep meanings in the Quran. You understand, yani subhanAllah, if I told you there's a 10-foot wall, if you can't reach the top, you're certainly not going through because it's built tough. Sah? This is exactly what happened here. Dhul Qarnayn was guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to create an immense wall, a barrier that could not be overwhelmed and overcome, and sure as heck could not be penetrated to that easily. The dalil we have, and this is where it gets really scary. These guys, they're not normal human beings. Again, they're cannibals. They're mufsiduna fil ard, destroyers of the earth. When they saw this, they're like, okay, we can't go from the top, so guess what? We're going through. We're gonna go through. And they started digging and drilling and bashing and hitting. Every day, you wake up, you go to school. You wake up, you go to the playground. You wake up, you go to the gym. Every day you have something to do. These guys have one thing to do. Ever since that time, by the way. And ta'ayish, you have a long life, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you a long, healthy life. Say Ameen. These guys have one purpose right now. Ever since that time, guess what they're doing? They're trying to break through. Every day. They put in a solid 15, 16-hour shift. Allahu A'lam. But that's all they have to do. They want to get out. And they're choked. They're pissed off. Because they used to run. They used to run the world. They used to come out and they used to eat and kill and do whatever they wanted. Now they're trapped. Guess what? Every day they dig and dig. And there's hundreds of millions of them. One gets tired, the other guy comes in. And they're all going at it. Until khalas. Now it's time for them to reprieve. Time for them to take a nap. So their leader, he says, stop. Shifts up. Hit the hay. Go to sleep. Tomorrow, we're going to get back at it. So they all put down their pitchforks and axes and whatever they're using. Allahu A'lam. And when they're sleeping, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala causes all that work that they've done to be undone. They went through, Allahu A'lam, how many feet of molten metal and copper and iron, and it becomes undone. All because of what? They didn't say inshallah. وَلَا تَقُولَنَّ لِشَيْءٍ إِنِّي فَاعِلٌ ذَلِكَ غَدًا إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ. Another important note. Don't think you have any will or power or decree. Me and you, we have nothing. Nothing. It is all by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by His command. وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ. Me and you, we have no will. We have a drive, we have goals, we have dreams, we have aspirations, we have ability, alhamdulillah, we have choice, we have reason, but we have nothing compared to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, because He has the decree. And that is why we put our faith in Him. وَعَلَى رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ, as the Imam mentioned. If you're truly a believer, you put your faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you rely on Him. You do your best and you move forward. So say inshaAllah for everything that is khair. Everything that is khair, say inshaAllah. So every time they do this, they dig and they dig and they dig. When they stop, they forget to say inshaAllah. Until the day comes. Dhul Qarnayn, when he completed his task, he said, this is a mercy from Allah. Putting these people away is a mercy from Allah, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy is infinite, and they are such a torment and chaos that the people are at peace from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when they come out, and they will come out by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, حتى إذا فتحت ياجوج وماجوج وهم من كل حدب ينسلون. When they emerge, they will overwhelm this world. And there's so many of them that the numbers of the people of Jahannam, of hellfire, the majority of them will be from Yajooj and Majooj. It was mentioned in the Nas that on the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah, Adam alayhi salam, our father, the father of humanity, will witness that from every 1,000 of his children, he's the father of humanity, 999 will be of the people of hell, and 1 will be the people of Jannah. The odds are stacked and staggering. But 999 will be Yajooj and Majooj. That's how many they are. Imagine how many people have been born and died ever since the time of Adam alayhi salam. And when this happens, not only will Adam alayhi salam be shocked, قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, when this is revealed and understood, this is when الصبيان تشيب. This is when the children will have gray hair in a matter of an instant. Because when they see the numbers are stacked and staggering against them, 999, only 1 will enter Jannah. There's many descriptions of Yajooj and Majooj online, in books, and I'm going to mention the false ones. Yajooj and Majooj, as we mentioned, there are 2 tribes, human beings. Some people have described them as to be huge, like trees. Some people said they're very short, like 3 feet short. Some people said they had big claws. There's some who say they have huge ears. Their ears are so big that they can sit on their ear and they can wrap themselves with the other ear. All of this is nonsense. Nonsense. ولا أصل له. From the ضعيف والمكذوب. The correct description comes from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that is authentic and verified. He said sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a nutshell, they have wide faces. Wide faces. Okay? And this is particular to the people from the Asiatic region. Okay? He described them sallallahu alaihi wasallam as al-mijan. Al-mijan يعني المطرقة, the shields, you know, the broad shields that the swordsmen used to carry in battle, like broad, their faces are broad, okay? And they have very small eyes and small noses, and then their hair is a blondish hue. I knew the last one threw you off. You were expecting fine black hair, huh? And they like to eat noodles and sushi. No, they are not the Chinese. They are not the Chinese. There's actually a very famous but very ignorant, I can't even call him a scholar, he says that the Masih al-Dajjal is the almighty dollar because of the one eye. And then he says that Yajooj and Majooj are the Chinese people because they overwhelm the earth. Absolutely false. Absolutely false. Okay? And then he emerged from the China wall. This is rubbish. Absolute rubbish. The Chinese people are actually very good people, especially the Muslims amongst them. Inshallah, tabarakallah, sallallahu and yubarak lahum, and may Allah ta'ala protect them. And yes, there's a lot of Chinese people, but not as many as Yajooj and Majooj. I'll tell you that right now. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says very wide, broad faces, and their noses are small. Their noses are very small, not very small, and their eyes are small, and their hair is a blondish hue. Okay, but when I describe them to you, don't think that these guys are cute and cuddly, because when I tell you this is the unbeatable army, this is the unbeatable army. No army, no power, human power on earth can stand up to these guys. Nobody. I don't care what you have, how many troops, what technology. لا قبل لكم اليوم. You have no chance. And this is a direct dalil. When they emerge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will decree to Isa ibn Maryam and the believers at that time to retreat to the mountain of At-Tur. Meaning, don't even try. Let them just go berserk, because they're going to cause ruckus. Huh? During the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Zainab bint Jahsh radiyallahu anha wa ardaha, she said, رأيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فزع. يعني he came out and he was startled. He wasn't scared, he was startled. He was in a panic. يعني something happened. ما الذي جرى? What happened? فقال ويل للعرب من شر قد اقترب. ويل للعرب من شر قد اقترب. And he's pacing and he's racing in the sense. He says, woe, warning to the Arabs from an evil that is close, that has gotten very close. ويل للعرب من شر قد اقترب. And then he said, قد فتح من نظم يأجوج ومأجوج, like this. He said, the barrier that is containing Yajooj and Majooj, they have penetrated it, and then he made this. That's how much they have broke through. This was 1400 years ago. And then Zainab bint Jahsh, she said, she knew right away. She didn't say, is that bad news? What do we have to do? No, she knew right away. She said, أَنُهْلِكُ وَفِينَا الصَّالِحُونَ. Will we be destroyed? And amongst us we have pious people, good people? Isma. She knew, يعني Al-halak, al-halak. Destruction is coming. If they come out, it's over. It's over, meaning. Yani la, there's no. So she said, are we going to be destroyed even though we have good people like Abu Bakr, Siddiq, Umar radiallahu anhu, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Are we going to be destroyed? And he said, Naam. Naam. إذا كثر الخبث. Everyone will be destroyed because the khabath, the lewd, the despicable overwhelms the good. Wali waqfa huna. We live in a country, wal-iyadhu billah, that it's widespread haram and fisq and khabath. The least you and I can do is promote the good and forbid the evil, to protect ourselves, our families, and to help guide those who need. يعني لا يكفيك. It is not enough for you to say, nafsi, nafsi, I'm worried about myself, these people are going to hell. La. La. You have to promote the good and forbid the evil, and you have to do good and open. Because إذا كثر الخبث, if the evil and transgression overwhelms, and نحن we're all hiding, al-halak, it is chaos, destruction. والعياذ بالله. When will they emerge? We're almost done, by the way. First of all, I must remind you, when you hear this, don't think for a moment that you should want to live to see this. Huh? You are not ready. I am not ready. Huh? Don't think. I don't care how many push-ups you can do, what you have ready. Do not ask for this. هذه فتنة. يعني نسأل الله أن يفكنا منها. When will they emerge? They are from the final 10 major signs. Huh? And the signs, the 10 major signs, they're somewhat in order from what we know from the Nas. Al-Mahdi, Al-Dajjal, Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam kills the Dajjal fi Babylon, and then Isa alayhi salam will rule and he will decree the Shara. But when this happens, when this happens, when Isa alayhi salam kills the Masih al-Dajjal, al-A'war, al-Kadhab, he won't even have a moment to relax. Because the decree of Allah will come then, right there and then, to take the Muslims to mountain of the Dhul, to retreat right away. And it's not even time for them to relax after they went to war with al-Masih al-Dajjal and the Jews and all the kuffar who followed him, and they said, this is Rabbuna. They don't have time. Why is that? Because the last 10 signs will come one after the other, like a strand of pearls being cut, one after the other. And Yajooj and Majooj will emerge as soon as Masih al-Dajjal is killed by Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam, and they will retreat to At-Tur fi Sinai. And the believers will be with Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam in the Tur, sealed off, seeking protection from Yajooj and Majooj. The chaos that ensues then when they come out will be heard. Yani, it's not like they're going to do crime quietly. These guys are loud and proud, and they're here to take over and destroy. Everything in their way will be pillaged, burned, murdered, raped, eaten. When they pass a valley, they'll make sure to leave nothing, torched and scorched. When they pass a body of water, they will drink it completely. There's so many of them that when they pass from the first one to the last one doesn't even get a sip of water. The earth is already dry, because they would have already drank the body of water. فَيَقُولُ, there was water here at one point. There was water here at one point. You can see just cracks, but they drink and eat everything. And when they reach the mountain of Khumar, Bayt al-Maqdis, these people, Yajooj and Majooj, will look around, and it will be a vast, desolate valley. Nothing moving, nothing creeping, just them standing with their arrows, with their axes, with their weaponry. And why did I say arrows? Because Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned that they have arrows. And Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam, he comes with a spear. And I mentioned this to you guys earlier, I think it was last week, The end of times are not going to be like these times. You're not going to have your fancy iPhone or iPad. Technology will cease to exist. Will cease to exist. You will have nothing but to revert back to the olden times. And there's a hikmah here, ghaya. And many of the ulama have delved into this subject matter. I'm going to give you one tidbit. If you look around you today, the quwwa, the sulta, the power belongs to the one who has the most technology, the most wealth. Huh? And not like we as Muslims are deprived, no. But we are juhal, we are ignorant. We are ignorant when it comes to this. The vast armies and the vast power that overwhelms, that persecutes the weak, the Muslims, they rely heavily on technology. Heavily on technology. Yani, from their arms to their suits to their tanks to their planes, everything is technology based. Everything runs by microchips and satellites and GPS and all this stuff. You see it every day. They're coming out with new, amazing technology. Look up what a solar storm is. This is something remarkable. These technologies that we have today are man-made. The sun has such a power that if it has a storm that is so minor and it releases a flare, it could destroy every satellite in orbit. Every satellite in orbit. And this happened, I believe, in 68, was it? Where Quebec, the entire city, fell off the grid completely because of one minor solar storm. Allahu a'la wa a'lam. But I'm telling you this. The ulama istadillu, they said, when the Quran, Kalamullah, the greatest words, the most profound words, will no longer exist. You open the Quran, there's nothing. There's no words except for that which is in the heart. This is the greatest ilm. Sah? Before that, the ulama will all pass. So Allah yarhamhum rahmatan wasi'ah. Ilm will be, yunza al-ilm, will be removed, plucked. So why do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will leave this primitive ilm, such as technology? There's no Quran left on earth. You think He will leave technology? No. So we will go back to the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in terms of gear and battle, horseback and swords and spears and arrows. I'll get into this more inshallah in the future. But when they get to this mountain in Bayt al-Maqdis called the mountain of Qumar, they will look around and there's nothing, no one left. Yani they went everywhere. Isa ibn Maryam and the believers are safe in the mountain of At-Tur. When they reach there, they look around and they say, ha! We did all this. We run this. We own this world. And then they're like, why don't we go after who's up there? And they will cast their arrows. Cast their arrows. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cause their arrows to come back down as though they have hit something with blood. And they will take it and they will say, look, we killed all the dwellers of earth and now we have killed the dwellers of the sky. قتلنا من في الأرض وقتلنا من في السماء. هذا للاستدراج. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a hikmah here. You know when somebody is so arrogant and so ignorant and so vile, they think they're amazing, they think they're so good, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala istidrijhum. He will give them more to go on, more to feed off, because it was more against them. And all of this power and this might, unchallengeable. How do you think they died? How do you think Ariel Sharon died? The man with the big fat belly who used to march, like he owned the world. He used to murder thousands of children in Palestine, women, men, desecrate masajid. So Allah يعطيه ما يستحق في الدرك الأسفل من النار. How did he die? He died motionless. He couldn't scratch himself. He was in a vegetable state for years, rotting and decaying. Istidraj. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has a very, very wise way of showing the people His signs. We're blind because we don't see them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala causes their arrows to come back down red with blood. So they say, we killed everyone in the earth and the heavens. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send this very small little worm. Small naghaf. It's called miasis. It's a miasis worm. It exists today, by the way. This is the remarkable thing. We have the weapon that's going to kill them. And it attacks livestock. You know, like cows and pigs, helpless livestock. It goes into their noses and eats them alive. And then they just drop dead, these cows, these poor pigs, the sheep, just livestock. They drop dead from a worm. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cause to eat at the entire home of Yajooj and Majooj. There's one narration that mentions it will eat from their necks until they all drop dead suddenly. Top. When this happens, remember Isa alayhi salam and the believers are in the mountain of Dhul. They're retreated there. All the sound and the noise and the chaos stops. Nothing. You can't hear anything. So they're like, it's over. So when they emerge, they see the devastation and the chaos. And they see juthath, bodies everywhere, carnage everywhere. Unlivable. The earth is unlivable. Yani, decomposing bodies, blood, and gore, and horror, chaos. So Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam will resort to the only thing a believer does. If something is beyond you and everything is beyond you, he didn't call the special cleanup company or the UN or nah. Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send these massive birds. These birds with long necks, as long as the necks of camels, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam described. This species of birds, we don't know. We actually don't know. Because the long-necked birds of today are land dwellers. These birds fly. And they exist. We don't know where. We don't know how. It is by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they will come with massive wingspans, long necks, as long as the necks of camels. And they will pick up the bodies one by one. And they will take them to a place commanded by Allah. But then it will still be carnage. Because the remains, the decomposition, the stench. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cause it to rain. But this rain is not just an average rain. This rain will quench the earth, clean the earth, replenish it completely until it becomes safia, pure, clean, and new life begins. And this is when Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam will rule the world upon the Shara, upon al-Islam. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions a very important note here. He said, no one will have a problem with anyone else. Ya subhanallah. It's as though you are in Jannah but on earth. There is no ill feeling, no issues, no confrontations, no conflict during this time of Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam's time. And by the way, he comes back as a Muslim, not as a Christian, A. B, not as a prophet or a Nabi, because his prophethood has been sealed, it's done, it's finished. The final messenger was Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he will come back and he will rule by the Shara, by al-Islam, and he will pray behind al-Mahdi, and he will be buried as a Muslim by the Muslims. How long will he rule for? اختلف العلماء, they said there's two major opinions, 40 years or 7 years. And Allahu a'la wa a'lam, but the more correct opinion is 40. 40 years. 7 years with Al-Mahdi, and 40 in total. This is the correct opinion. Wallahu a'la wa a'lam. And when this happens, as I mentioned, Isa ibn Maryam will die as a human being. He's a human being. He's still alive now. But he will die and he will be buried as a Muslim. And this is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send a wind. And this wind will take every believer that has good within them. And then we have the people that remain. They will go back to ignorance and back to disbelief. Now, I ask you by Allah, if you witnessed all of this, all of these fitan and these mihan, these miracles and this power, how could someone go back? How could someone disbelieve? Nas'Allah al-thabat. Nas'Allah al-thabat. Ask Allah to make you firm upon the truth. And know and understand that your heart and my heart, they're not in our hands. They are in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And more specifically, in between the fingers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he did this. يُقَلِّبُهَا كَيْفَ يَشَاءُ. When I say fingers, I don't mean the fingers of a human being or any fingers of any creation. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has two hands, both of which are right. And they resemble nothing like a hand that you can imagine. And he has fingers. And yes, your heart is between his fingers, and his fingers do not resemble anything that you can imagine. وَيُقَلِّبُهَا كَيْفَ يَشَاءُ. This is exactly how Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did it to the Sahaba. Your heart can be turned at an instant. At an instant. You could wake up tomorrow and say, you know what? I don't believe. These doubts, if you let them creep up on you, you will go far astray. And we live in a time of lies and deception. We have the truth. We are the people of truth. Be truthful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so you die and live upon the truth. Nas'Allah al-thabat. Nas'Allah al-thabat. Nas'Allah yathabat qulubana ala dineh. Yathabat aqdamana ala siratil mustaqim. There are a few more signs, but inshallah I want to get into this next week, inshallah. Actually, next week I'm not here, but the week after, bi'idhnillah, we will discuss, there's 4 more signs, the dukhan and the khasf, the dukhan and the dabba, and then yawm al-qiyamah. بارك الله فيكم. أشكركم على حسن استماعكم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.